Shalom, welcome to Jana's Kosher Kitchen. Today we are going to make Soufganiyot. Soufganiyot are also called jelly donuts. Now there is an Israeli folktale that says that after Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden, God tried to make them feel better and gave them jelly donuts. There is no evidence of this whatsoever. But the idea that jelly donuts bring joy is standard across many cultures. Soufganiyot is now a staple in Israel and around the world for the holiday of Hanukkah. Fried treats are a good fit for a holiday focused on oil. It's commemorating the miracle of lights that had enough oil present for one day and lasted for 8. When Jews migrated to Israel, jelly donuts, Soufganiyot, became a staple during Hanukkah. Now, while homemakers were well able to make latkes at home and did that at home, they felt that Soufganiyot was too difficult, and so they went to bakeries who made a lot of Soufganiyot. And in fact, I'm told that the bakeries make 50,000 Soufganiyot each day of Hanukkah to give to the IDF. Now, I hear from a very reliable source, a friend's daughter who's been in Israel during Hanukkah, that as she walks in streets, all she can smell is Soufganiyot baking. The most stereotypical Soufganiyot are made with jelly. We now fill them with a lot of stuff. You can fill them with lemon, with custard, with jelly, with Nutella, with chocolate. Let your imaginations and your kids' imaginations go wild. Now the recipe that I used, and I've tried many recipes, but this is the one that I thought was the best, the lightest, and tastiest, is from Miriam Kresh, Kresh. For my ingredients, I need a large bowl. I need a cup of milk. If you're going to make this parve, use water, it's fine. And the milk should be warm to like bath water. I have a thermometer that says 90 degrees, and that's perfect. I have 4.5 teaspoons of yeast. I have a 1/3 cup of sugar. I have 5 1/3 tablespoons of butter. You can use a parve margarine. I have 3 egg yolks and 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then 4 cups of all-purpose flour. So let's get started. I have my milk, and it's warm. I'm going to pour it into the bowl. I'm going to put the yeast right in the warm milk, which helps it start the rising process. I'll stir it up. And I'm going to add the sugar, which also helps the yeast do its thing. I'm going to stir this up, and I'm going to let it rise for 10 minutes. So I'm just going to put it on my stove. All the rising with these Soufganiyot are at room temperature. So I'm going to put my buzzer on for 10 minutes. So the yeast has been sitting in the warm milk and the sugar for 10 minutes, and I'm just stirring it around a little bit. There's a few chunks. And what I'm going to do now is add the melted butter. The butter got a little bit solidified because I had it up there, but that's an okay thing. I'm going to melt this, stir it around. And then I'm going to add the egg yolks, all 3 of them, and the salt. And we'll stir that and mix it really well. Make sure the yolks get mixed in there well. And once that's mixed in well, I'm going to start adding the flour. I'm adding the flour to begin with right in this bowl and mixing it with my utensil, which is a wooden spoon, 1 cup at a time. when it's starting to get sticky and looks more like a dough that I can knead, I'm gonna put it on the counter and we'll knead it with the rest of the flour. The recipe calls for 4 to 5 cups of flour. When I have made this previously, 4 cups has been plenty. We'll see how it works today. It's starting to get a little stiffer. The trick in this is to use the yeast and to get the milk or water warm so it activates the yeast, and to put the sugar in there and wait the 10 minutes. See how nice and thick this is getting? So I'm now going to put it on the counter with the flour, and I'll need to add some more flour while I'm kneading it. Because it's still going to be quite sticky and not able to fit into a ball. And I'm going to be kneading this like this, adding more flour until I get a nice smooth ball. To knead, you take your heels of your hand and push down and then roll the dough over. It's still a bit sticky. And what you're going to want is a nice smooth ball. Starting to come together. See how it's soaking up all the flour? Not quite a smooth ball yet, so we'll continue. We'll continue adding flour. But it's almost there. So I'm kneading it and it's not getting sticky anymore. So that lets me know that I have enough flour in it. We'll see if it stays that way. If it gets a little bit sticky again, I'll put a little more flour on it. But I don't think I need to. See how it's a nice smooth ball? Now I'm going to take this and put it right into the dish that we've been using. Doesn't need to be a clean dish. We don't put oil on it like you do with some breads to let it rise. I'm going to put some plastic wrap on it. And this says to let it rise on room temperature. So I'm just going to put it right back on my stove. And I'm going to put it on for an hour and a half, which is what we're going to let it rise for. Hi, so we have risen our dough for an hour and a half. It is still in the bowl that we did all the mixing in. And what I'm going to do now is just sprinkle some flour on the counter. Punch the dough down. That helps release any air bubbles. And we are going to roll out the dough to about 1/4 of an inch thick. That's about right. Now what I'm going to do, I have my parchment paper on my cookie sheet, and I'm going to sprinkle some flour That will help the circles that I made not stick to the parchment paper, because they will stick if we don't do that. And I'm going to take my cookie cutter, you can use a glass rim, and I'm just going to cut out all the circles. Okay, so now I'm going to take this dough and I'm going to put all of my cut up discs on my floured cookie sheet with parchment paper. I'm using the spatula to pick them up in case any of them are sticking to the counter. If they are sticking to the counter, it's because I didn't put quite enough flour on them. But these are coming real nicely. It's a little stuck. And then I'm going to take the leftover dough and roll them out again so we don't waste any of our yummy dough. And again, just to another 1/4 of an inch. And this is about 1/4 of an inch. I'll cut more circles. If some are a little thicker than the others, it really doesn't make a difference, because when we fry them, we're going to fry them until they're done. These are a little bit thicker than the other ones, but that's really okay. That happened when I tried making them and they worked out fine. So we have these all in the cookie sheet, sprinkled with flour. I'm going to put some plastic wrap on it, and these are going to rise now in room temperature for a half an hour. And these circles can be pretty close together because they rise upward. They don't rise like the diameter doesn't get bigger, so they can be pretty close together.